Welcome to the fourth episode of The F Team. The F Team is a fortnightly podcast brought to you by the team at Fast Track Technology. I'm Hayden Van Der Roon. In today's episode, we cover announcements from Microsoft's first all-digital Ignite conference, the latest in foldable computing, and we uncover learnings from the recent Microsoft 365 outage. Let's get into it, shall we? Let's talk, as we do every week, by starting with Microsoft 365. To do that, I've brought my second and third favourite end-user computing specialists, and that's in no particular order, Brody Hamdorf and Varun Kapoor. Welcome, gents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you.
I thought you guys would have had your fill last episode, but you're back for seconds, or is it thirds?
I'm on my third century here.
Good. Nice. Well, it's good to have you both here. There's obviously Ignite happened a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really keen to get your thoughts on it, but we can't really start talking about Ignite until we get the big elephant in the room out of the way. What's the elephant in the room? Well, on the 29th of September, users of Microsoft 365, Outlook, Office 365, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Azure reported that they were unable to log in. Instead, they were presented with a transient error message informing them there was a problem with signing them in. For a span of 3 to 5 hours, if you're a Microsoft 365er and you weren't already logged in, you could not log in. So it was a pretty big deal. So the first hint of the issue was a message on the Microsoft 365 status page, Twitter page that is, that said, we've identified a recent change that appears to be the source of the issue. We're rolling back the change to mitigate the impact. This was shortly followed by we're not observing an increase in the successful connections after rolling back a recent change. We're working to evaluate additional mitigation solutions while we investigate the root cause. So during that time, users still not able to log in. Gents, what happened to cause this dev oops moment?
This whole segment was just created for you to say dev oops. So going through the PIR that was released through the Partner Center earlier last week, I believe it was, most of the issue came down to the function that prevents them from rolling out new features to their prod environment and focuses on their dev environment. That particular feature wasn't working as intended. So there was a change that they pushed through, intending for it to go through to their dev circle essentially, and it ended up rolling out to the public circle and causing a whole bunch of grief.
Crazy.
So all the tech geeks, I'll just add some more context here. So whenever they roll out the changes, they do it across 5 rings over several days. And in this case, what happened was the STP system failed to correctly target the validation ring, and it ended up rolling out in the prod and the dev. And that's why it just went down.
If only Microsoft had a test environment, right?
If only they had a test environment for their test environment, this whole thing could have been avoided.
Hence, DevOps.
Just test environments all the way down.
And so do we have a good understanding of how they actually fixed the issue?
So they just released a brief statement about it, and they said that they took some steps to revert the automated rollback systems, and that's how they reverted back the change. We are still waiting for an in-detail explanation about it, but it's Microsoft.
I think the best we'll get is if prod environment do not roll out.
Our shell.
Pretty big issue. A lot of users across the world would have experienced it, and obviously it highlights the need for some form of hybrid or backup environment. We won't really go into that. That's a big topic upon itself, and maybe we'll highlight that for another day. But just wanted to talk quickly about that. A lot of users would have experienced that issue, and as much as we're fans of a lot of the stuff that Microsoft does, that's not one of them.
Exactly.
But on to more positive things, more exciting things. So one of the we wanted to make this almost an Ignite special, and on the 24th and the 25th of September, we got a very massive Microsoft event, and For those who are unfamiliar with Ignite, it's Microsoft's annual gathering of technology leaders and practitioners, and it's been running since about 2015. And so the great thing about Ignite is that it combines a lot of the smaller IT conferences that Microsoft used to have that were really specialized. So we're talking about Tech Ed, the Management Summit, Exchange Conference, SharePoint Conference, the Link Conference. Not that anyone would be too excited about that nowadays, but and there's a bunch of other ones that kind of rolled into the one event. And the good thing about that is that there's something for everything at these events, and often the topics that they have span beyond just, oh, this is your sysadmin type event, and this is an event for business technology leaders, and this is for sales and partner managers and all that sort of stuff. You guys went to last year's event, right? Which was an in-person event.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It was actually this year
Yes. It was the 2019 Ignite, but it was held 2020 for us.
2020,
so.
yep.
Right. And so, this one was a all digital event. And I know that I think that's obviously we know why that is. But I think it was, I certainly have been to, I think, most Ignites since 2015, and it's a really good event to go to in person. There's a lot of networking opportunities, and I think, unfortunately we didn't get that, but the good thing is we did. It was a very highly produced event. There was lots of really good content across lots of different stuff. And today, there's so much, we can't cover it all today, but I just wanted to highlight and get, your feedback and thoughts on some of the big productivity stuff that's come out. And so let's start with productivity score. So productivity's score was actually announced back in April, but was released into general availability this month. So productivity score aims to help organizations understand how their teams are working and how efficiently they are using Microsoft 365. So Brodie, what insights can productivity score uncover about teamwork in our organizations?
Yeah, cool. So a large part of the score idea is just to sort of give admins a better understanding of exactly how well the adoption of the Microsoft ecosystem is going through, and a big part of that is teamwork. A lot of the tools and products are designed to get people working together as easily as possible, and especially in times like this, as remotely as possible as well. So what it can show is a large portion of the teamwork score is centered around collaborative working. So showing which users and how many users are making use of shared files or Teams threads or channels or even email conversations, as well as seeing this growth over time. So if you're just rolling out these features, though I hope you're not rolling out email just now, but if you're rolling out Teams now, just sort of getting an understanding of how it's being adopted by your users and how it's being used by it. It sort of gives better visibility over workspaces that aren't being used as well. So if there's particular Teams channels that maybe they were built specifically for a project which is no longer being used, or built for a business function which doesn't happen as often anymore, then it shows these as well. So you're able to go ahead and archive them and just keep the channels and teams that are alive and keep them open and ready for content. It also shows as well how frequent a lot of these workspaces are being used. So you can get an understanding that if you're rolling out Teams and it's not being used, or it's being used one day a week in most situations, then maybe your users need better training on it, or maybe it just needs to be reevaluated how it's being used for your business. So just
maybe you've got another app that they're using instead. Maybe if you've got Skype available, or you're transitioning from another competitive app like Slack or something, there's not enough has been done to push them across, or to incentivize them to get across as well, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So linking it in with Cloud App Security, it sort of gives a really good understanding of exactly how effective the Microsoft products that you've rolled out are in your business for teamwork.
And it's not just teamwork, Varun. There's some insights about meetings that we can uncover with productivity score as well, right?
Yeah. So the whole point of launching the productivity score for meetings specifically. So if you look at the pre-COVID era, we used to have that personal meetings in the meeting rooms and stuff like that. But now it's not the case, right? We are all work from home. So the whole point of launching it to gain more insights about how the meetings are happening these days. So you can drill down to specific users, how much time they're spending in the meeting. Are the meetings going over 30 minutes or under 30 minutes? And what kind of experience they are having.
Yeah.
So they have also integrated endpoint analytics with the productivity score for the meetings. So what will that do is like it will tell the IT admins that how their devices are behaving when they're launching the meetings. Because we all have been in a position when we launch the meetings and it's just stuck in a loop. So that will also help us understand how the devices are happening and what kind of updates need to be pushed out. So I think so it's a pretty good move, and obviously you will get more insights and more data about your users and what are they doing in terms of meetings and collaboration.
Nice one. And there's also some insights we can get around Microsoft 365 app health, which I think you were kind of hinting at before.
Yes.
So what are is there anything else we need to know about, the insights you can get from Microsoft 365 app health?
So it will basically tell you about the update channels that you're using for the organization. Usually Microsoft recommends for the monthly channel so that you keep getting the stable updates. But again, it depends upon what kind of channel you are using. So it will tell you like how many devices are on a specific channel version for that apps. And then based upon that, you can obviously troubleshoot and then, make the experience better for the end users.
Nice. So it's a pretty powerful tool. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Ignite, right? There's, technology isn't, insights about technology aren't just for, IT admins, all of the statistics we're talking about there, particularly the first two teamwork and meetings, that's something that, senior management is going to want to know.
Exactly.
How people are working within their organization and how are they using the tools and are they using it to the best ability, or is it disruptive, or, are they not using it in the way that you kind of want? So I think, it's a really interesting thing. And I think there's a lot of value to be taken out of that.
Yep.
The next thing I wanted to raise was Microsoft Stream. So there's some really big changes. So anyone who's been recording Teams meetings will be familiar with Microsoft Stream. It's basically the platform you use to watch back the recordings and look at the transcriptions. And it's been a fairly good app, but there's been some pretty big changes to the way Microsoft wants us to use it. So basically, Microsoft has announced that they're going to completely rebuild it and making it the default video platform for all Microsoft 365 apps. So Microsoft plans to migrate customers on the original Microsoft Stream service to the new Stream service over the course of a couple of months. So, it's still going to be the video stream platform, but what are the limitations around the current state of Stream that have prompted Microsoft to rebuild it in this way?
So on a high level, like the current Stream service isn't really consistent with the rest of the M365 suite. So that is in terms of the architecture, the channels, permissions, governance, sharing, and guest access. So Stream currently powers video uploaded to Stream, but not to the rest of the M365 apps, which includes SharePoint, Teams, and Office. So currently, if you look at it, it's currently a siloed product or service. So I think so that's why they are migrating the service again, so that it's available to be uploaded to OneDrive or SharePoint for the users. So I think so that's kind of the current backdrop of it.
A big move forward as well is sort of giving a bit more control over the files that are actually in there. I'm not sure if you gents have ever tried, but it's actually pretty difficult to get a high level of control over each individual file that's sitting in there. So I think a big advantage of it moving over to the SharePoint architecture is hopefully being able to have a bit more finer control over the specific files and videos that are being uploaded there, so you can make better use of them rather than just being uploaded and once and done sort of thing. Having a bit more control over it will be good.
So let's talk about that. So how are they? So you mentioned SharePoint Teams. So what are they planning? What's this new format for Stream actually look like?
So I haven't seen any specific images yet, but I believe it's going to be quite similar to how it's looking in SharePoint and OneDrive. I feel like, as Varun was saying before, a big move is to make it as uniform as everything else. Currently, it looks pretty different to all the other platforms. So I think we can expect something looking similar to OneDrive and similar to SharePoint in that regard, especially being built on the same architecture.
Nice one. Well, I think from an end user perspective, how we use video is going to be the big shift, right? So traditionally, if you want to record video, you have to either record a Teams meeting or go into Teams backend and film it there. So the big end user move, right, is being able to record, stream video in Teams or in SharePoint app, so that you can actually create that video in the context of what that video is about. So if you're recording, so for example, our product development team for our Microsoft Teams voice product, we have a channel that we use to talk about Microsoft Teams voice, right? So we can create video directly in that Teams channel, or we can directly create video in the SharePoint folder that we're using to capture our fortnightly catch-ups around and status updates for the development of that product, right? So whereas currently now you're limited to the meeting that you recorded in, or the back end of Microsoft Teams. So back end of Stream. So I think from a user perspective, that's going to be the big change, right?
Yeah. And also it will make the sharing with the guests as well a bit more easier, because now it's going to be stored in SharePoint Online and OneDrive. So sharing also becomes better in this migration. That's
a good point. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think, video is becoming very important, just beyond, obviously in the marketing space, it's been a very important tool, but just for communicating in organizations, video has become super important.
Exactly.
And so it's a really good move that Microsoft's supporting, the creation, management, and distribution of video internally and externally, right? So that's really good. The next thing I want to talk about is around, there's a whole bunch of changes, obviously, in Teams. We talk about it almost every week. It sounds like every episode. And the one that got me off the bat really excited was collaborative calling. So one of the things many of our customers, and I just touched on before, are using one of the things that our Microsoft Teams customers are using is Microsoft Teams Voice. And they're using it to call landlines and mobiles using the Teams app, right? Which is obviously not something you can do with the traditional app. You have to have a service provider who can turn that on for you. And so what collaborative calling does is that it allows you to link a call queue to a Teams channel, which I think is actually a really, really important thing for connecting calls and the way we manage calls with the way we manage Teams and the way Teams manage those calls. But I guess anyone who's not familiar with call queues and Microsoft Teams Voice is probably not going to be quite sure about what we're talking about. So Brody, can you give some insight into what a call queue is and why we should care?
Yeah, sure. So if you've ever been in an organization that has any kind of hot desk or a sales line, then you've probably been in a call queue before. You've probably used them on a regular basis. Fundamentally, it's just a collection of users or call agents that are sitting, in a group that are ready to receive calls from a user. So if a user calls into the help desk line, there's probably a group of support analysts sitting behind there ready to take that call. And so that's really all the call queue comes down to on a fundamental level in most phone systems. So I feel like this is a move towards integrating it more with Microsoft Teams as well, which is just a huge advantage, being able to split it out into a channel and be able to deliver the information and deliver the calls a lot more quickly to who they're trying to get in touch with is just a huge advantage.
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing, and I think integrated calling with Microsoft Teams is a really really big thing at the moment. A lot of organizations are looking into it, and a lot of organizations have already adopted it. So the way just integrating that as part of how we operate in Teams through the channels and being able to interact with those call queues in the channel, I think is a really important thing. The next thing I want to talk about was the ability to So one of the announcements I was most excited about was Microsoft has announced that you'll be able to soon transfer calls between your and a call that you're already on from your mobile to desktop. So by that, I mean, you could be on the train, take a Teams call, and then arrive at the office, sit down at your desk, and then transfer that call to your desktop without having to hang up and recall. So guys, just keen to get your thoughts on this one. I'm really excited about this. Is it a big change, or am I just excitable?
I think so. It's more of a user experience change. Like obviously, while we are on the go, we obviously prefer that if you're on mobile phone and we reach our desk, we want the calls to be immediately transferred to the laptops or whatever device we are using. So I think so. We should be excited about it. It's a good user experience stage at the end of the day.
It's kind of like what we talked about last episode, where the start new conversation button, just
Exactly.
a simple change, but it stops you from starting a new thread instead of replying to an existing thread. It's just another thing. We don't have to say everyone just hold off while I hang up and rejoin. Yeah. And it's the simple things. Simple changes that actually make a big difference that you're going to experience, once a day sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's the value of it, right? The next thing is a kind of similar idea, right? So in Microsoft Teams Rooms, the latest app for Microsoft Teams Rooms on Windows, so that's version 4.6.20.0. Is now available, which includes the 3x3 gallery view, which means that we can now view up to 9 participants in a meeting gallery view when hosting a meeting in Microsoft Teams Rooms. Hallelujah!
Yes.
So, guys, why is it so important to have a 3x3 gallery view available on Teams Rooms now?
I think it's just nice to be able to see all the people that are talking. Really, it's just a little bit distracting sometimes having a meeting. It's easy to lose track of how many people are in a call and be able to address everyone if you can't see everyone's faces. And we keep coming back to this point, but whilst everyone is more remote working and less people are in the offices, more people are calling in from home. You want to have that functionality still, so that when people return to the offices, or if they're in the offices now, they have the same sort of experience on Teams Rooms as they do on their computer as well. So I think it's just a well-needed change, really.
That's right. And like, if you think about it, it's, in a meeting room, that's where you normally have the largest screen, right? So we've got these huge, for in our office, I think we've got is it a 60-inch screen or?
I think so. It's 80
inch. We've got this 80-inch screen and we can only have 4 people on it at once. Like, what's that about? Like, so, no, it's really good. I think now people's on the 3x3 view, people's faces will be pretty much about the same size as they are in real life.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Unless you are a big head.
Yeah. I don't know if I fit into that category yet, and I'm not sure, but very good. And is this feature available now, or like as in? Will all of our managed Microsoft Teams Rooms customers have that feature right now, or will it take some time for them to receive that update, do we think?
So I believe it's scheduled to come out by the end of this quarter. They've definitely been testing it for quite a while. I've been reading about it almost all year, it feels like. So I definitely feel like it's going to be out by Christmas, which would be a nice little gift for the holidays.
Yes, very good. And the next thing, so there's so many, as I said, there's so many features on Teams that we can talk about, and we're going to. The next one is Microsoft has announced a touchless meeting experience that allows you to control the meeting with a separate mobile or laptop device. So what are the key features around this feature, guys?
So I think so. This is more of a thoughtful move from Microsoft because of the COVID scenario. So with this touchless Teams feature, you'll be able to mute or unmute the room, turn on the camera, turn it off, exit the meeting. So the whole point of it is prevent the users from using the shared device in the essence. And that's about it.
I think the other thing, I think that's all very true. And the additional thing is that not everyone has a super fancy Logitech meetings room set up, right? So we have a lot of, we have an integrated, purpose-built Microsoft Teams video conferencing tools. So we have all the things that we need to do, adjusting the camera and managing the Teams meeting from that technology happens because it's integrated. But not everyone's going to maybe have that. So the ability to use a separate device to connect and manage the features means that anyone who doesn't have a purpose-built tool is getting the ability to manage it more effectively from their device, and they're given more control. So that's the other thing I think is worth mentioning. Cool. The next thing I wanted to raise was around security. So again, going back years ago, Microsoft went through this process of realizing that they had hundreds and hundreds of portals to manage, and particularly in security. And so they've been on this journey of condensing the amount of portals they've got, and making it a bit easier for sysadmins to navigate them. And certainly that's been true for Microsoft Defender. And there's been a big update. So Microsoft, in early 2019, they rebranded Windows Defender to be Microsoft Defender. And now that rebranding exercise has continued, and they've brought more products under that Microsoft Defender, product name, right? So now Microsoft 365 Defender includes Microsoft Threat Protection, obviously, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So that was previously Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. So now that's Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is under the stack. There's Microsoft Defender for Office 365, which is interesting. So this is a product that we're really excited about, or have been for a long time. That was previously Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. So now that's Microsoft Defender for Office 365. And then the last one is Microsoft Defender for Identity, which was previously Azure Advanced Threat Protection. So all of those tools coming up into the Microsoft 365 Defender brand. Guys, it's good that they're all consistently named and under the same thing, but how does that rebrand and these changes affect the way we, as sysadmins, security professionals, access the security features in this way?
So what was that portal name again? I forgot the name of the feature. Was it?
It was Microsoft Defender. The whole thing is
Microsoft Defender, right? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Didn't quite catch that the first 10 times. No, I think this is a great step to just continue unifying it all. It's frankly just a pain to keep track of all the different security portals and all the different products and the right place to go to make sure you're attacking the threat in the right way. And you don't really want to be, just thinking about which portal to access to manage an issue. So the fact that they're continuing to bring things under smaller and smaller banners is just a great move in simplifying it and speeding up or rather clarifying exactly what you're doing and where you're doing it. So I think it's just another quality of life improvement. There have been some additional features that they're bringing in as well, but I feel like the main selling point here is just the continued simplifying of exactly what the product is.
Also, another thing to add here, is Microsoft is currently heavily focusing on Azure Sentinel as well. So at this stage, Microsoft Defender will be Microsoft's XDR product, and Azure Sentinel will be the company SIEM's line. So Azure Sentinel is deeply integrated with Microsoft Defender, so that we can integrate the XDR data in few clicks and combine it with all the security data from across the organization. So I think they are doing quite a lot of integrations in that space, which is quite a good move, and all the SOC guys would be happy with it.
I think that's the big win. I think the SOC guys are the big winners in this. I don't think the end user
exactly
knows much about it, but certainly how we navigate around and monitor the different tools and change the policies and whatnot. I think that's a really good change, and I think I'd like to welcome back a very special guest, Mr. Nathan Ned Kettle. Thanks for joining your second F team, Nathan.
It feels like we've been doing it for years, mate.
Well, we've got some topics to talk about, so let's get straight into it, eh? So Nathan, you'll know better than most that your next smartphone or tablet might actually flip open to reveal its screen and fold up when you're ready to put it away, just like the old school clamshell phones of the 1990s. There's a growing list of foldable devices on the market today, and even more on the horizon. The Samsung has the Galaxy Fold, Huawei has the Mate X, Microsoft has the Duo, and Lenovo even has a folding tablet, the X1 Fold. So the big question I wanted to discuss today with you, Ned, is are foldable devices something we even want? And I get this is a pretty big question. So let's start with why do we even have foldable devices in the market right now?
It's kind of a situation that we're harking back to, as you know, because you and I are old enough to remember a lot of the early mobile phones having to have some sort of flip functionality in order to get the ability to use it in a carryable sort of, usable form factor. So what we're seeing is a repeat of history in that sense. It's basically a natural solution to the problem of the growing demands that we put on the technology. Just to have a look at the sort of cause and effect, a recent Gartner study on evolving mobile productivity trends concluded that workers are turning to performing tasks on mobile devices at an increasing rate. It hasn't plateaued, it's not going down, it's only increasing year on year. This is especially true in technology-driven enterprises such as our own, but also others as well, and especially with organisations that seem to have a higher percentage of the millennial generation making use of this sort of technology. So there's pressures there in the workspace that is causing the technology to evolve as the needs arise. Even if we look back to a 2016 study by CITO, the top responses for the different outcomes categories of mobile and application usage were improved business process was the top response. The use of productivity apps was the main use case for mobile devices, and enabling mobile access to enterprise systems was the main outcome that these responses were looking for. So what we're seeing is just an increased demand on mobile technology to fill gaps in the productivity workflow.
Which was probably a huge difference in the way we thought about, mobile devices 10, even maybe 5 years ago, where I'm sure if you'd asked those questions, it would have been around, being able to make calls really quickly and easily, the efficiency, like being able to access social media, those kind of apps, and probably the productivity styles probably the productivity needs were probably driven by, users who are like, like marketing type people who can use the apps that already kind of were around on mobile devices, but not necessarily the productivity style, office style apps, right? It's a real big shift in that mentality, it sounds like.
Definitely, and the technology shifted as well, and that's something we'll touch on, as that arises. I think there's definitely developments in the app stacks between PC and mobile, just because of the differing technologies that they run on.
Interesting. So, when we're talking about foldable devices, then what do we think? There's obviously, as you mentioned, there's consumers are flagging. We want mobile type devices that make us more productive and get work done. So, what do you think the key use cases for foldable devices are in that context then?
I think if you're trying to sum it up in one word, in a really wide view of the use cases, it's adaptability. It gives the user a choice about how they spend their time. So whether you're in an office, not at a desk, going from department to department, collaborating on different parts of a project, it's much easier to do if you can do that in person rather than remotely. There's always benefits to being in person. As much as we love our video conferencing technology and what that's allowed us to do, there's just no replacement in the end, especially for large collaborations involving multiple departments and people, to be able to get around and work physically. Also with downtime or portions of time where it was otherwise productivity barren, whether it's via travel or waiting in lobbies for meetings or what have you. These mobile devices allow the choice to use that time and space more productively by using a device that you otherwise wouldn't have had on hand because the compute power perhaps of your mobile phone isn't enough. It doesn't support the apps, doesn't have enough RAM, drive space, what have you. By pushing the technology into this space, it's allowing that use case for you to do something where you couldn't before on the technology. These shifting use cases are meetings, video conferencing, the Microsoft Office suite stack, content delivery, application access, and whatever productivity workflows you can think of that you usually do on your desktop or laptop, you can now do on the go.
And it's good because you think about what a meeting is now, for example, just to borrow from that. Especially meetings are pretty prominent right now, remote meetings, that is. It's not just about, being able to do the meeting, but actually the changing ideas of what a meeting is. So, now it's rarely that I go to a meeting now where there's not a screen share. And it's going to be very difficult on a traditional mobile device to do a screen share effectively. So having a foldable device that allows you to have people's faces on one side, the screen share on another, and being able to easily tap around and navigate if you're doing the screen sharing or if you're just receiving it. So I think there's that duality of the screens, and we're going to talk about some of the devices in a second, but the key component across all of these foldable devices is that being able to do two things at once. And I think that's
the choice.
Yeah, and the choice to do that. Yeah.
You don't have to do two things at once. If you want to specialize that folding screen to make better use of the space and detail, you can. If you want to adapt it to doing certain work here and certain work here, you can. That's the key point of these devices. It just allows choice. It allows adaptability to do tasks that you couldn't do before. I
mentioned before one of the kind of prompts of this is that, we're obviously big fans of the Surface range, Microsoft Surface range. And a little while ago, Microsoft released a Duo. So I was really keen to get you in, Ned, to talk specifically about the Duo. So I'm keen to hear from you. What do we actually need to know about the Surface Duo?
So the Duo is a very interesting product. It has a few design choices that are inspired and some that raised a few eyebrows because it's taking a space in the market that nothing else really fills. Not 100% fills. So it is a folding device, but it's not the same as other folding mobile phone style devices that we've seen before with the one-piece folding screen. It makes use of two separate screens, which sort of limits it in some ways, but also makes it work really well in others. So yeah, it's a very interesting product. I think it's got a lot of legs, and that with design and iteration and development, it's only going to get better.
So one of the interesting things I noticed about it is that it's not a Windows 10 device, right? They use Android. Why do you think why do you think Microsoft chose to go with Android and didn't choose to kind of revive their Windows 10 mobile phone operating system?
You ever heard the saying, don't flog a dead horse? So there's a few factors. First of all, it's simplicity. Android is the market leader outside of Apple, and there's no way Microsoft will be using Apple's operating system. Let's put that out there straight away. So it just makes sense from that perspective. I think Microsoft were never really happy with the levels of adoption of Windows Mobile. There were some issues with app compatibility across stacks. And just general development costs that are involved in getting an operating system working properly. So they could have gone ahead and spent all this time, money and energy and investment in getting Windows 10 mobile in a place they like it and getting it to market, and then it just doesn't get adopted because the user base is already married to Android. So by adopting Android and co-opting the technology, working with Android, Microsoft now have a reliable and stable platform at launch. There's no bugs, there's no issues, it's tried and true. And it's already integrated with the Microsoft app stack. So, it didn't make sense to double up on the work. So yeah, saves time, saves money, gets a working product to market. It's win for everybody.
I'm interested. So this is a pretty unique phone, right? It's got the two screens. Would you say that it falls into the mobile category or the tablet category, or is it a category unto itself?
So as this emerging technology of folding phones and folding compute devices come about, especially in the phone space, it's sort of asking the question again, is when is a phone not a phone? And that got asked years ago when the first Apple smartphones came out, and people were like, oh, is this even a phone? What is it? We don't know. So when you try to categorize this thing, I would say it's still definitely a smartphone. It's just extra. It has capacity and capability beyond what a normal smartphone can give you, and that's what Microsoft's aiming for. They're aiming for a point of difference, and something that, even though price-wise they're sort of a little bit more expensive, but you get extra. Like people generally don't have a problem paying a little more if they're getting a little more. It's that balance about, I get more, so I pay more. That's fine. Everyone's happy. It suits my needs. And I think also the dual screen layout sort of precludes it from being compared against tablets, because it can't actually do that mono screen content very well because of the bezels in between. So I don't think Microsoft even wanted to compete with tablets, because that's cannibalizing their own market with the Surface Pros. So I think they've done a good thing by segmenting it this way and having it operate in this respect, because it's probably more durable in construction, because we did see a lot of early failures in these single screen folding devices. So I think it was a good choice in that respect to go that way, and to develop the product in that way and stick to it, rather than trying to be the same as everybody else. So
you mentioned pay a bit more to get more. So how much can we expect to pay for the Duo, and how does that compare to some of the other? And we're calling it a smartphone. You've just said that it's a smartphone. So how does that compare to some of the other smartphones on the market?
So there is a bit of a price premium on that, as we alluded to. Can be anywhere around $200 to $300 depending on what sort of model and spec we're comparing it to. But the price premium reflects the hybrid phone productivity device nature of the Duo. It's not just a phone, in the same way that an iPhone is a phone, or a Samsung Galaxy is a phone, with its one screen and the support of certain apps. So I think that's where the premium comes from. Over time, we've come to see the mobile phone as more than a device to call other phones. So this is just a natural extension of that evolution towards doing more and more and more and more every time they release a new product. It's got to do more. If it does the same or less, well, what's the point?
If you look at some of the other folding smartphones on the market, most of them are all quite beefy and thick, and they don't even fold flat. Whereas because of the hinge that they've got on the Duo, it folds perfectly flat. It's super thin, and like a Surface, looks like a mini Surface laptop. It's really pretty. It's a really pretty device, and I think that the value of that can't be underside. I think Microsoft has done a great job in making pretty devices. And there's no substitute. If your smartphone isn't a pretty thing, then it's going to detract from it and people aren't going to be interested. So that's an important thing. Last question. What do you think on the Duo, what do you think the Duo, the release of the Duo says about Microsoft plans for the mobile/tablet space?
Rightio. So it's not Microsoft's whole plan for mobile tablet space, but it is a big part of it. It's no secret that it's a space that Microsoft have coveted for some time, because as Bill Gates has stated on a number of occasions, one of his greatest ever regrets is losing ground to Apple and Android at the start of the smartphone era. Even though he wasn't technically CEO at the time, I think he was on the board of directors or something like that. But he still thinks that he's responsible for one of the greatest failures in Microsoft's history. If they had gotten onto this at the start, they could be the market leader quite handily in this space. So they're chasing that dream that has eluded them for a long time. So don't think they're not going to invest a lot of time and resources into this. And with the rise of the mobile market, it only makes sense. Like all tech companies, from the hardware manufacturers to the product developers and the app developers, everyone is going mobile, because everyone's on the move now. We can't afford to sit still. Downtime's a thing of the past for most people. So I think there are other factors as well to do with the ecosystem itself. Microsoft are going to become very invested in the Android ecosystem, or at least co-opting it for some time, because they're making use of ARM processors in the new Pro X line. Microsoft and Apple have both tipped their hats that ARM is going to be an architecture that they are going to work very heavily with, because it's very, very energy efficient, and that's what mobile devices need. There's no point being able to crunch huge compute if your battery's flat. You've got zero processing power at that point. So I think, and one of the main issues currently between ARM and x86, the traditional CPU architecture, is that the language in which the apps are written and the way they speak to the processors is different. They speak a completely different language. So at the moment, things developed for ARM don't run well on x86 and vice versa. At best, you've got a translator in the middle, but that is a big performance hit. It's an energy hit. So it kind of makes it a little bit redundant. So I think, and even with NVIDIA buying ARM, they spent $40 billion to buy ARM because this is where the industry is going. And in 3, 4, 5 years, once the ecosystem's developed on an app and operating system basis, we're going to see a lot of ARM technology or based technology in mobile devices. So even Apple's CPUs, even though they're an in-house design, they're still based on the ARM architecture. So everything is sort of heading to that small, light, energy efficient mobile space. It's just the nature of it.
It's pretty exciting times for smart mobile devices, eh? It's not, and obviously it's not just mobile devices that are getting the foldable treatment. So Lenovo has released the ThinkPad X1 Fold, which I think came out earlier this year. So that's a very kind of different feel device. They've gone a very different way. It's a kind of different kind of category. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on this one, Ned.
So they called it that. Can we be really lame here? They called it X1 Fold, but it's more like X1 Bold. I thought it was a really bold choice for them to develop this product, and they've gone to huge lengths to get this this product to market first. I'm so excited by it, I can't even speak. So these sort of products, you just can't bang them out in a year or 2 years. These require massive investment to get working and working well. So they would have actually started development of this product back when folding screens, especially the one-piece folding screens, had a lot of bad press. So that was a really sort of inspired choice to stick with it and develop it, because it could have quite easily backfired. But they've gone to a lot of lengths to get this right, and it looks really, really good actually. It's got me very excited with what it can do. So I think, yeah, good on them for sticking to that design choice and developing it and making sure that it was functional and getting it to market pretty much before everyone else in the laptop space.
So what are the key things from a specifications feature point of view that we need to know about this one?
It's fairly comparable to most workplace level laptops. So the stuff that we find in our office that the guys are working on, that most offices are working on, is that ubiquitous, you know, i5 Intel processor, 8 GB of RAM, that sort of thing. But it's got a twist. So it's got the new Intel Lakefield CPU architecture in it, which is the much touted Big Little. It's designed in such a way where it has one big processor on the chip and then 4 little ones that are very energy efficient. So when you've got a burst load, so like it's waking from sleep or you're opening an app or asking it to do something to start up, the big processor comes in, you know, big power, gets that job done, but the heavy lifting behind the scenes, running background tasks and keeping the whole show together are the 4 little energy efficient cores. So that's an attempt to, you know, keep performance high when needed, but energy consumption low when it's not, which is so far had really good results. So that's a really interesting part to me as a CPU sort of tech head, that these new architectures and new designs are coming along to give us these different packages that can do different things. It has as I mentioned, the 8 GB of RAM, which is enough for general productivity tasks. Obviously, for a little bit more heavier workloads, if you're working with big data sets or, you know, a lot of PDF editing, you're going to probably want more than 8, but for most users 8's fine. The only issue is because of the small compact nature of it, it's soldered RAM, so it's not upgradable, which maybe they'll bring out a 16 GB variant, which would be great for future proofing. But I think for emerging technology, I think the 8 GB is quite fine. And the main difference between the models is actually the storage. So they've all got the same screen, they've all got the same processor, they've all got the same RAM. Your main point of differentiation is storage and warranty.
Right.
The premium models have a 3-year premium warranty, whereas the entry level models have a 1-year return to depot warranty.
Right.
All models support Wi-Fi 6. They all have the same 5-megapixel camera, 13-inch OLED screen. So as far as specs go, I think you're pretty much narrowing it down to what your storage option is.
But you're not really buying this device for those kind of features, right? Like those are all kind of secondary to the key feature, is the fact that the damn thing folds, right?
That's it. So you've got enough compute to do the tasks that you need to do on the go. That's the key takeaway there. Other than the fact that, you know, it's adaptable to situations. You know, 1 minute you're working on a tablet drawing, you know, designs or sketches, and then you're folding it in half and you've got a touch keypad on one half and a screen on the other to fire off a few quick emails in between, or you can even put it back into tablet mode, use the kickstand, and there's got a little Wi-Fi keyboard that you can actually use, because I'm personally not a big fan of touch keypads. I like the physical keypad, so that inclusion's really, and it comes as standard across the board on all the models. So that's a good inclusion. You get the pen as well, so it doesn't matter which model you buy, it can do it all, and it does it well.
I think it's when you think about what the price tag is, though, I'm not surprised that they've thrown in the pen and the keyboard. How much can we expect to pay for the ThinkPad X1 Fold?
Ooh, they've just had a little bit of a price drop, I believe.
Yes.
And I think the top model is just under $6,000.
Yeah,
a bit of touch under.
The last time I checked, it was $5,900 Australian.
It's not for everyone. It's certainly for the early adopters and the real tech heads out there and people who can make use of it. But I think that price is for the 1 terabyte model, which I think, unless you're using like a lot of apps and they all have to be stored locally, I don't think you need it. I think the 256 gigabyte model at a much lower price point, I think, what were they, around about the $4,000 mark, somewhere around about there.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but yeah, it sounds about right.
They make a lot more sense. Like, you've got a quarter of the physical storage, but physical storage is not so much of a thing now that we've got such ubiquitous access to cloud storage. You know, whether your organization or cloud storage, which most organizations that would use this device have in abundance, or even your own personal OneDrive, like everyone with a Microsoft account has a terabyte of free storage. Why are we needing 1 terabyte of NVMe when 256 will do the job and save you near $2,000?
So, but thinking about it then more holistically, you know, there's so many foldable devices on the market right now, and if you do some Googling, you'll find that there's even more planned, and most of the key players have something in the works. You know, what do you think the future holds for foldable devices? I think it's the way things have to go. There's no choice about it. You know, if you want to do more, you need a physically larger device to do it, but you can't carry that physically larger device around. It's not as mobile, it's not as portable, it uses more power. There needs to be a way of shrinking the footprint. So folding devices at this point in technology, until, you know, we discover holographic projection, you know, or something along those lines, that's Minority Report style, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, until that comes along, then folding is the way to do it, because it gives us a way of reducing that layout footprint while still retaining the flexibility and the productivity.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the F Team. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts from, and the video is available on our website. Go to www.ftpl.com.au.